No one else was in the room where it happened, the room where it happened, the room where it happened. No one else was in the room where it happened, the room where it happened, the room where it happened. No one really knows how the game is played, the art of the trade, how the sausage gets made. We just assume that it happens, but no one else is in the room where it happens. No one else was in the room where it happened, the room where it happened, the room where it happened. No one else was in the room where it happened, the room where it happened, the room where it happened. No one really knows how the game is played, the art of the trade, how the sausage gets made. We just assume that it happens, but no one else is in the room where it happens.
Hey, nobody else was in that room where it happened, but we're here tonight in the room where it's about to happen. I am so excited to be back with you. Y'all know I've been all over the place, but I am back here with you, and welcome to the Be the Message podcast. This is episode 5. Can you believe it's only been 5 episodes? That is amazing. My name is Angel Simmons. I am your Miss Revolutionary Purpose World 2026 to 2027. My platform is Be the Message, Suicide Prevention, and Mental Wellness. So I have been here hanging out with you all since October 2025. I believe that was the first show. October, November, December. We did March. Yeah, since October. That was the first show. So I'm excited to be here. The purpose of this podcast is to shine light and give a voice to causes and people that are making necessary and significant change today in their fields. Now, this month of April, and I know it's almost over, but we got a lot to talk about. This month has a plethora of awareness causes, from community service and anxiety and stress management to minority health and sexual assault and prevention. Today, however, we are talking about National Counseling Awareness Month. National Counseling Awareness Month. And I had to pull out my shirt. It might be backwards for you, but it says God plus therapy, because you need both, God plus therapy. So we're talking about National Counseling Awareness Month tonight. And I want to give you a few statistics before we start. The American School Counselor Association recommends a student to counselor ratio of 250 students per one counselor. However, over 56% of school counselors report managing caseloads of well over 300 students. We'll talk about that. The 2025 School Counselor Report shows that many counselors are overwhelmed and unable to provide the level of guidance their students deserve. That was last year's report. Now, schools with proper student to counselor ratios report higher graduation rates, higher attendance rates, minimal discipline issues, and so many more success rates. Tell me, why are they being overworked? Why are they being overwhelmed? Why are they being overworked? Why are we taking our school counselors for granted? Now, tonight's special guest is a Student Services 504 coordinator, and she's going to tell you exactly what that is. She is the co-host alongside yours truly of the Mentali-Tea podcast. She's the board vice president of Dreamscape Theater. She is a wife, mother, dog mom, actress, director, friend to way too many. Okay. And because it's also National Volunteer Week and Month, I can tell you with certainty that she has her hands in everything going on in and around her church, community, and kids' school, even though one of them ain't even in school no more. One of them left the state and she's still running back and forth. She is everywhere. So this is my volunteer of the month. Okay. So volunteer awareness month. I'm bringing to the stage Mrs. Crissy Johnston.
Hey,
It's
what
also
an
National Poetry Month,
intro.
so I gotta pull out poetry snaps for National Poetry
You know
Month.
what?
It's
You're not lying because
so
we
much,
we
so
just
much.
finished a musical at the school I'm at, and I listen. That was all volunteer hours, and it was great because that fills my cup. So you know how it is.
I
Theater fills my
do.
cup.
I I do know, and I was fortunate to be somewhere in the vicinity of a production by Dreamscape Theaters in February. And what was your role there, Miss Ma'am?
Oh, I was the director of that
The
one.
director.
Director.
She was a director,
Director.
not just in it and working behind the scenes. She was the director. Oh my gosh!
Which
So
also, in between all of that directing and rehearsing, I had surgery in the midst of all that too. So
I see. I haven't even gotten to that. I ain't got to that. But go and tell him. Go and tell him the story. Tell him the story.
Oh, y'all. Okay, so by nature, I'm a clumsy person. I will tell you that. So back in January, I was heading to work at the school I'm at, and I was leaving my house, misjudged a couple stairs, fell, hurt my ankle. Of course, didn't think, even though it was swollen, I was like, it's fine. I can walk on it. I'm good. Fast forward like 2 weeks later, I had an MRI and I had torn ligaments that needed surgery repair. And I was like, this can't happen. I have a show to direct in February. Like this,
And still did. She was riding around, rolling around, scooting herself with one leg up. Okay.
Listen, nothing
Because she
stopped.
had work to do, because she does not stop working. This is my volunteer of every year, every year. And I'm glad to call her my friend as well. I told you all my friends are famous. This right here. Her hands are in everything, in every school, in every place close to Schaumburg. Okay. So, Miss Crissy Johnston.
Yes.
How did you end up in this field? Because I know you, and I know you were raising daughters and dogs, and being a creative, and all of a sudden said, I'm gonna go back to work. No, I'm gonna go back to school, and then I'm gonna go back to work. How did you end up in this field?
Well, so my oldest daughter graduated high school, and I was a stay-at-home mom for like 18 years, basically, if not, and all of that time was volunteering my time, volunteering everywhere, right? And so that was always keeping me busy. And so when my daughter was leaving for college 2 years ago, I was like, well, what am I going to do now? Like, she's gone. I have the one, but there's not a lot to do with her yet for volunteering. And my daughters are so complete opposites, y'all. Like my one that's in college would love me being at everything. My younger one is like, no, we're good. Mom, you're good. You don't have to be there. So, mom still shows up though. So I put in for, I saw that in the school district that I live in, they were looking for a part-time, it was a division assistant position, right? So it was a brand new thing, not really clear. And the school down the street where my girls went, where my daughter went, was hiring. So I was like, all right, I'll put in for it. And lo and behold, all the schools in our district were hiring for that same position. And so they're like, we created this new position called the 504 coordinator, because the 504 world was starting to grow so much. And a lot of people think 504s and IEPs are the same, but they're not actually. So 504s was growing so much, they needed somebody in the buildings to kind of help with coordinating the growing numbers for the counselors, social workers, case managers to manage like scheduling meetings, emailing parents, just kind of making sure paperwork was put in correctly, put into the system, sent out, annual reviews done. So it was just a lot of moving pieces that, excuse me, they wanted to kind of take off the shoulders of the counselors and have a coordinator to do all that. So I was like, hey, perfect. Part-time, dip my toes back into being a working parent. And yeah. And so they found me at the school I'm at right now. And I've been there. It's my second year.
Why do you think there's been such an increase in the 504 and IEP community evaluations? What would you call it? Why do you think it's been such a increase in those numbers?
Well, I will say it's I feel, and this is speaking as not just a 504 coordinator, but also a parent, I feel that these kids are putting too much pressure on themselves to be like straight A students, honor students, needing to get perfect grades, and I can tell you for one, my oldest daughter was that way, and I don't know how she became that way because me and Vic, we never put that pressure on her. So it's almost like they put that in their own minds. And I don't know if it's a social media thing, peer pressure, like I don't know where it comes from, but I think a lot of these kids put that stress on themselves, and it could come from the parents too. Yeah, I don't know, because I don't know everybody's home situation. But between that and then the higher diagnosis of ADHD that's coming around, it's just like all of these things coming into play. And so when you find because they have to get neuropsych evaluations, right? So if you find the right doctor who does that evaluation and says, this is the diagnosis, and I think they would benefit from this, we can't say no. When they come with the documentation, it's like, all right, and I sometimes wish we can say no, because sometimes it's like when I, from the behind the scenes, read because we ask teachers for feedback, right? Because the teachers are the ones that are with these students the majority of the day. They know how they're learning, whatever. And sometimes I read these feedbacks, I read everything, and it's like, this student doesn't necessarily need a 504 because we have other sources, like other resources. But when they come with that evaluation, it's, our hands get kind of tied with saying no.
It's interesting. You mentioned that students putting the pressure on themselves. I recently had a conversation with a parent whose child is taking entrance exams for high school. And they are absolutely convinced that if they don't go get into this one particular school, happens to be my alma mater where I graduated, but if they don't get into this one particular school, that they are going to be poor and destitute and living on the street and unemployed. And it's all based on if they get into this particular school or not. And I wanted so badly to say, have him call me, because at some point I was unemployed. And maybe not poor, but definitely broke. And I got the diploma. So
and you graduated from that school.
I don't know what exactly you're expecting the school to do for you as far as your financial stability. But this is cool. So just to speak to that pressure, it's happening. It's happening beyond suburban life. It's happening in the inner city as well. But that was a very interesting analogy. Yeah. What do you wish people understood more about school counseling and student services? Because you get to see behind the scenes, and you being a parent and having had kids go through the system, and you got one in college now, you got one. How old is this baby? I know how old she is, but what grade is she in? But
freshman.
High school. So you have high school and college age. So they've been through the grade school system. They've been through the junior high school system. As a parent, what do you wish more people understood about school counseling and student services?
What I wish more people would understand is that these counselors, and I mean, counselors, social workers, they're busting at the seams with students. Like, it's not just the 504 kids and the IEP kids. Like, they have to be there for all the kids. And like in my school in particular, we have over 2,000 students. And we don't have more than like 10 counselor, 12, maybe 14 counselors, right? So what I like see a lot, where it's like parents are, I don't want to say like that sense of, I don't want to say entitlement or privilege. Like, I don't want to say that because every student is important, right? But there's sometimes where it's like the expectation from the counselor for their child alone, as if they don't have any other students. It's hard because these counselors are not just there with their set amount of students. They're there because students will come to them in crisis. Like if they're having a crisis during the day, the students go into student services to find a counselor. So while the counselor can have their schedule, like I'm going to meet with this, it stops. Like they stop everything to help that student that's coming down, that's having something going on. So to just give the student services teams a little bit more grace, just for on a daily, because it's a lot. Like they are busting at the seams with, not just the special 504 IEP things, but also just the regular student population in general.
And that was really important to mention. It's not just their caseload, it's any student that stops in their door. They may not have ever met with this student before, but on this particular day, somebody's going to stop, and they have to stop everything they're doing. It's really important. If I was a new parent, new family, moving into your community, what accommodations are available to students with disabilities or mental illness at that grade school level?
I mean, at the grade school level, it's so different because like grade school, middle school, high school is different accommodations. I mean, some of the stuff stay the same, but middle school, just it really depends on the diagnosis, right? Because not every student comes with the same diagnosis. Like for instance, my one who's a freshman in high school, she's got epilepsy. So hers leans towards more medical accommodations.
Chronic illness.
It's chronic illnesses. So that's like TD1, epilepsy, Crohn's, anything like that. You'll be able to go, get a nurse pass, just go to the nurse whenever you need, pace yourself in like PE or whatever, allowed to have food or drink in the classroom with you. If you have an episode, you can take a rest, just not get deducted for attendance if you're missing for doctor's appointments or if you've had, an episode happen, right? Other things like, we also have 504 plans that we've done for kids with ADHD, some with anxiety and depression. Like if it gets to be too much, they have accommodations where, as particularly in high school, the big thing that the parents do look for is extended time on testing, on assessments, working in a smaller setting so they don't feel overwhelmed. Some kids will get an accommodation to wear headphones to block out noises and distractions, stuff like that, to just try to, and access to, having the teachers check in, just to make sure the students understanding like what's being spoken, what's being talked about, what's being taught, just depending again on what their diagnosis is and based on what feedback teachers have given, and just working as a team with that case manager. So the case manager is usually either a counselor or a social worker or sometimes a school psychologist, but they're always working as a team so that it's all together instead of just this is what it's going to be and that's just what you got to take. So
I'm glad you mentioned teachers. As a student services coordinator, what advice would you have for new teachers that are coming into the field or coming into even your school district?
Oh, for new teachers, I would say have the grace and the patience, because it is all new, for some, who are coming in. Definitely get to know your student. Definitely get to know which students have those plans in your classroom. Because the more you get to know your student, the more you'll know if they'll want to advocate for, because the whole point of 504 plan especially is we want the students to advocate for themselves, and the plan is there for them, right? So that's what it is. Just check in with the students, just see if they're cool. keep it kind of under the radar, because a lot of these students, especially I could speak as a parent, my daughter hates having one because they feel like they don't want to be the center of attention. They don't
Mm.
want it, and it should be a private thing anyway. No one needs to know other than you and the student, right? But just like a little casual check-in every now and again, just to kind of see where they're at, like just a temperature read.
Mm. What can parents do to be more proactive in evaluations or program plans for students? How can they be more involved in preventative measures for their students?
Everyone came home and now all the dogs are barking.
I love it.
How could parents be more proactive? Honestly, parents don't be brushed off by doctors. Honestly, I will say, like with my daughter, for her epilepsy diagnosis, she was misdiagnosed for the first 4 years of her life, right? And it's like, your child best. However, what I will say, as they get older, also listen to them. Right. So like when things are being planned, the student is also involved because the student knows what they need in the classroom. So what I'll tell parents is, yes, be proactive, make sure you get the accurate diagnoses. If you feel that there's like that red flag, pursue something, right? But also listen to your child because they know themselves better than anybody, and so it's got to be kind of like a team thing with your child as well.
I'm curious, what would be a misdiagnosis for epilepsy?
Oh, they at one point thought it was something gastrointestinal because of lip smacking, almost imitating acid reflux.
Mm.
So, and the thing of it was, when she would have her seizures, it happened when she would spike a fever. So it was written off as complex febrile seizures. And so that's why, I never got like the accurate epilepsy diagnosis until we almost lost her. And then the doctors finally listened. And we're like, oh, so that thing that we found when she was a year old that was just a finding is actually what's causing everything. So, yeah, it's like, oh, no kidding. So she could have been diagnosed sooner. Yeah. That's what
I feel
that's,
like,
yeah.
yeah, that is very common with a lot of chronic illness. And
Mm-hmm.
you just reminded me of the family. It's a family I know and love in Kentucky, and it was Lyme disease, but for years
Oh,
they didn't know. And the daughter was a dancer, so it affected her.
switching rooms. Keep going. All these doctors are going to start, doctors' dogs are going to start doing their thing. And you froze, my love. You froze. Why'd you freeze?
Before they figured
You froze.
Well, it was so many years and tests and doctors and traveling and expenses, only to find out it was Lyme disease.
Isn't that
Um,
crazy?
yeah, and something that could be very common in certain areas and populations, but it's not something that's looked at. So, and if the
Oh, where'd you go? I lost you again. Uh-oh. What happened?
I don't
I
know.
lost you. What happened?
I don't know.
Where was I?
But that was interesting. But your story
Yeah.
just reminded me of that diagnosis and chronic illness,
Mm-hmm.
as well. Same with mental health. Um,
100%.
diagnosis. Yeah, even when I was teaching many, when I was teaching preschool. That's how far back I'm going. But I will never forget, we had a student who had a behavior problem, and I mean, would terrorize the building at certain times of the day, and no one knew why. When he got his eyes checked and they found out he needed glasses, this was a
Oh,
completely different child. Once he
isn't
got
it
his
interesting?
glasses, perfect gentleman.
Right.
No
Yeah.
trouble, no issues, no write ups, no suspension, nothing. He was in
Because it's like
kindergarten.
they can't speak up for themselves. They don't have the words. They don't know. So
They
that's
don't
why
know.
it's very important when
Right.
you're a parent to really advocate for your child and
Mhm.
don't, don't give up. Just don't give up.
Right. All he knows, it was frustrating, and he's mad. He's angry. He couldn't verbalize. I have a headache. I have a migraine. My head is
Mhm.
throbbing. I can't
Yeah.
focus. The letters keep moving. I'm trying to do my work and I can't see. He was just throw the book, throw the
Mhm.
paper, flip the desk, flip a chair, throw a chair.
Yeah.
But once he got his glasses, so whenever I started hearing about students with behavior problems, that was always my go-to. Have you had his eyes checked? Have you had his hearing checked?
Mhm.
Eyes and hearing. Start there. Start
You,
there and see what happens after that.
you know what's interesting when you say this to me, right? Until my daughter got diagnosed with epilepsy and she was like a baby, like she would bite me, she would scream, she would throw, like she was just like, so all this time, like it was almost like, okay, she's maybe having these seizures, these episodes, but she
Mhm.
can't tell us. It's like what's hurting. Like she would really, like one time we were at a checkup at her pediatrician. We were at the pediatrician's office. Okay. It was probably like her 2-year checkup or something. And the stethoscope was too, like sensory issues. Like she had all sorts of things. The
Mm.
stethoscope was too much for her that she was screaming the top of her lungs, ran out of the room and was running in the lobby and she was just like screaming. And the doctor says to me, she's like, okay, I really can't have her doing that. Maybe we should finish this appointment over the phone.
Oh,
What?
wow.
So my 2-year-old's having a meltdown, and that is what you're telling me. And you're the doctor, right? So I said, then
And
we
you're
started
the,
seeing
you're the
different
doctor.
doctors. Yeah. And,
Help
it
me.
was almost
Help
like,
me.
oh, she's just being a toddler. She's just being 2. And it's like, no, like there's something, like that's the thing. The doctor would not, like, I'm like, there's something wrong. Like there's something really wrong and no one's listening.
Wow.
So yeah.
Mm. How well do you think schools are supporting counselors? You heard the statistics I dropped at the beginning. Sounds like your school is doing a lot better, but you still said bursting at the seams. Even with enough counselors to student ratio, it's still bursting at the seams. So, what
It's
kind
so
of support are counselors receiving?
honestly, it's I don't know, to be honest. It's hard because it's hard to say because the thing of it is, like being the 504 coordinator at the school I'm at, we have obviously, like I told you, the highest enrollment in the districts.
Mhm.
Out of the 6 of us in the schools, and we're part-time, mind you, I
Mhm.
have the most 504 cases. I have
Mhm.
almost 310 students that have 504s at our school.
Mm.
25% of our student population either has a 504 or an IEP. That's a whole grade level for us.
And you have only over 300 to
That I
yourself.
manage, correct. I manage for the team, for the
Mhm.
case managers, right? Because they
Mhm.
couldn't, like, I think on average, just for 504s, this isn't like their caseload of all of their students. This is just 504. They're
Mm.
averaging about 15 to 20 students each that have 504 plans. And then I'm managing as a whole, all of the students to make sure.
Mhm.
So I would say the support the counselors are giving, I mean, admin tries their best to support the counselors as much as they can. And it's hard too, because even our admin need the support, you know, because it's just like it needs to come from the top, and it's just really difficult. I think all the schools in Illinois right now are just kind of like, there's a lot of burnout. There's a lot of burnout. And you know, sometimes it makes me sad, because it's like these counselors go above and beyond for the students. It's almost like sometimes the parents don't see that and don't appreciate that. You know, and I would never be that parent like that. I'm that parent that's like, listen, I appreciate everything. And I'm not saying we have all the, like, it's a handful. It's a handful, right? Because the majority of the parents are thankful, are appreciative. But sometimes it's like, well, you're not doing enough. And it's like, oh my God, if only you could be here on a daily basis to see. So they are being supported by admin as much as possible. Our admin has been really great about checking in, making sure they're good. You know, if they need to step away, they could step away. You know, that's the thing. We have a very our admin's very good with open door stuff, and just like, hey, if you need anything, I'm here. Come talk to me. Right? Doesn't matter. Like, I may have something going on, but I will stop if you're in crisis, right? So I would say they are getting, I feel, supported by admin as best as admin can do.
Outside of school support, what kind of wellness practices and boundaries? I know that's a hard word for volunteer of the year every year.
Listen,
But wellness practices and boundaries for yourself. What kind of things do you have in place so that you don't take those 300 plus caseloads home with you every day and live in the angst of serving people? What kind of practices do you have in place?
well, I am actually quite proud that I put up a lot of boundaries this year, because last year I didn't. Last year being my first year, it was very overwhelming. Like, I could tell you this time last year, I was in one of the counselor's office in tears almost every day because it was just so stressful, and I was drowning. And I'm like, I need to get this work done. I was bringing it home because I'm, again, part-time, right? So this year I was like, you know what? I'm putting up my boundaries. So I only work a certain amount of hours per day. If I get anything like an email beyond what my end time is, it waits. Like, I don't respond to it anymore. It's going to be there tomorrow. I'll respond to it tomorrow. You know, if it comes on a Friday, I'll get to it Monday. You know, and I've told some of the I'm like, what's going on?
I was trying to find
like, oh my gosh, where's that applause coming from?
Applause.
Like, shoot, did I hit something?
Did you say it waits?
I did.
I am flabbergasted. Wow.
Like, you know what? It's not it. Yeah. And, you know, and when I talk to the other counselors in student services and I tell them that, they're like, good for you. You shouldn't have to respond after work hours. I will tell you something. We use Gmail, and that schedule send feature on the email has been a lifesaver for me.
Oh, love that.
Because I've been able to get all my work done earlier, and then it's scheduled to go out when I want it to go out, and then I don't have to set and forget it, basically. So no, boundaries, those are my boundaries. And I've been actually you know, more vocal. Like, if something's bothering me, I actually go and talk to the person instead of let it sit there and just kind of like, it's okay, it's fine. I'm actually speaking up for myself, advocating for myself, you know, and just maintaining. Much better this year than last year.
It's good. I'm proud of you. You proud of you? I'm proud of you too.
Thank you.
I just read something recently, and I know I saved it in my phone just so I can post it or something later. But it was something along the lines of, you mean to tell me there was a time where your job couldn't reach you after you left. Like
Right.
like you weren't checked. We didn't have um what is it that we're using on the Google, but we didn't have group me and
Yeah.
text, and we weren't doing
Yeah.
all that. So we would leave work and we just be off work until the next
Right.
day.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, and even when you had work email, you couldn't check it outside of work. You were at
Right.
you were at work. You couldn't check
Right.
it at home. That's
Right.
it. You
Yeah,
saw
that
the
was it
internet
because
when you got
they
the
used to
internet.
have their own special system. So, like, unless you had access to that outside of work, you were not checking anything.
No, you saw it. You saw it tomorrow.
Mhm.
Mañana. I'll see it in the morning. That's it.
100%.
That is amazing. To even think that. Now that was work-life balance. When you left
I
work, you were off
know.
work.
Yeah, I
You didn't
know.
even have a cell phone. They can't reach you. So if you didn't go
Exactly.
straight home,
Yeah.
you left work and went to dinner. That's it. You'll see me tomorrow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Um, how do you think counseling for school and students has evolved over the past few years? Maybe since the pandemic. You've had students, you've had kids, you've had girls. What do you see different pre-pandemic and post-pandemic in school counseling or student
Um,
services?
I would say that there's definitely a lot more focus on social emotional health um, since the pandemic because it was always there before, right? But it was just a sprinkle. But I think since COVID and since everyone's gone back, there's been a very big shift. I was telling somebody, my oldest was eighth grade 2020, right? She was a COVID eighth grade graduate out of junior high. And then my youngest, who went to the same junior high, right? I tell people, I said, I feel like my oldest was more prepared for high school academically
Mm,
at that point than I did my youngest, right? Because
wow.
I feel like the shift became so much more social, emotional, mental health, which is not a bad thing, right? But at the same time, it's almost like they need that balance, right? Like I feel like, okay, I love the social emotional piece and the mental health piece, but we also need to think about academics because when they get to high school, that's what's stressing them out on
Hmm.
top of everything else because the academics get harder in high school. So if we're not preparing them in junior high for that, and we're just trying to keep, because I will say middle school is crazy. Like it is like the melting pot for mental, like these kids coming through puberty, so many changes, right? But at the same time, I know you're trying to nip that in the bud, but if you're not preparing them for the harder classes come high school, then that's going to be a whole nother setback.
Yeah, that's hard. I remember when we first started Mentality. Um, Hopefully, you all will be seeing in the next
I
few,
know.
few days. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
it's
working on that.
coming. It's coming.
But when we first started that, coming out of the pandemic, and still, there still was some social distancing going
Yeah.
on. We were talking about the the climate of students going back to school, and the fact that third graders, well, at least the second graders that were in our after school program, had never been to school with other people
Mm,
because they didn't have first grade and they didn't have, you know, pre-K. They literally came into second grade and it was like, there's other people here. Let me jump off this wall, let me throw my shoe. It was
yeah.
like, this is not social etiquette. They don't know anything about social etiquette. They don't have any social skills because they've never been to
Right.
school before. They've
Yeah.
never been in the classroom. They've never
Yeah.
sat in a room with 30 kids. They
Right.
don't know
Right.
why
Right.
they're crying and
Yeah.
aggressive, and there's bullies everywhere because they do
Yeah.
what they do at home with their siblings. It was interesting, even making that correlation. They've never been to school before. You want to know why they can't sit still? Because they
Mm-hmm.
never had to sit still. They've been
Yeah.
walking around in pajamas and eating cereal for 3 years. What are you talking about?
That's true. That's true.
You got them in a
Yeah.
uniform trying to sit still? No, it doesn't work. But I
Yeah.
remember we had that conversation, but now we're talking about kids who've lived through that.
Yeah.
And now they have so much anxiety, or they're dealing with depression, or they're dealing with confidence and self-esteem concerns, and
100%.
wearing headphones in the class and not trying to be bothered with people. But you have to pass these SATs. It's some stuff that has to happen. Yeah. That's interesting.
It's true.
Wow.
It's true. Sorry, this light's making me look like very angelic right now. I'm trying to like find the remote so I can turn down the lumens on this thing. I'm like, my gosh, I look like Casper.
Okay. What words of wisdom would you want to leave with people who are sitting outside of this world of counseling and services and 504s and IEPs? What kind of wisdom would you want to leave? What do you want to leave the audience with?
I want to leave the audience with, advocate for your child. However, also listen to, be able to receive what feedback they have to give you from the school, teachers, counselors, your child. Just be open to receive that information, right? Because these teachers, I'll even speak to the teachers. I mean, the disrespect that some of these kids have now, it's hard. It's very difficult. And just know that the teachers, the counselors, they're not out to be against you or your child. They're there to help. They're there to be positive people, and just give more grace to that. Be more appreciative. Know that they are doing the best that they can with the resources they have. Some schools definitely have more than others, right? Demographically, we are not equitable at all in the state of Illinois. You know what I'm saying? But definitely, if you know your child is struggling, if you see that, if your teacher has reached out, even if your teacher hasn't reached out and you feel like your child is struggling, reach out to them. Teachers are very receptive to an email, to a phone call. I will say probably more an email than anything, because they'll have access to that right away. But just be open to give your take on things, but also to receive information. Because if you don't advocate for your student and they're not advocating for themselves, then it's going to just continue on until it boils. And then it just, nothing ever comes good at that point. So.
Do you have any interesting success stories or inspiring stories with any of your students these last couple of years?
Oh, the
any
fun
breakthrough?
So here's the fun thing, right? I help with the theater program at my high school, and I work really close in the fine arts department. And I could tell you that the majority of my kids that have 504s are in that area, either helping with crew, acting. Just because you have a 504 doesn't mean you're broken, right? It's not like that. Just, I know sometimes the kids are like, oh my gosh, I'm whatever. No, you're great. You're great. And I love seeing these kids push through whatever their disability is or whatever their diagnosis is. And then you get to see, like, okay, you're doing a fantastic job, right? And so, be honest with you, some of these kids don't even know they have a 504.
That was my experience, even working in after school programming. The kids don't even know.
The kids don't even
what's
know
on their record.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's just, these kids just, they amaze me every day. Every day they amaze me. And what makes me happy is when I hear a student who advocates for themselves with their teacher. Like, hey, you know, they're speaking up for themselves. Like, I'm struggling, or I need to use this. Like the ones that know they have their 504, I need to use this accommodation. And they're nice about it. Like, it's not like, well, hey, I have this accommodation and you're supposed to give it to me. They don't do that. When it's like, I have a valid, like, I'm going to the teacher, I have this concern, and they advocate for themselves. And they'll come and tell me, hey, Miss Johnston or CJ, hey, you know, I did this.
Gosh, you're Miss CJ.
I go by CJ. That's my
You're so cool.
I'm so cool. They gave me a nickname, CJ. So, you know, they'll come to me and they'll be like, I said this to them, and I'm like, I'm so proud of you. Like, good for advocating for yourself and speaking up, you know? Because at the end of the day, kids, when you're 18, guess what? You're on your own. Like, literally, the world thinks you're an adult, and then you have to start speaking up for yourself. I will never forget when my oldest turned 18 and I lost that My Chart access at midnight. I was like, and like, she has to give me the access now for everything. Like, they don't give you anything once they turn 18. So I will tell parents, please, please, please give your children the tools now to be successful after high school, when they get to the post-secondary and beyond world. Because if they don't have the tools now, they're not going to know what to do at that point.
I know this is a longer conversation. This might be a Mentali-Tea conversation, but okay. I would love to see a study. I would love, you know, I'm a statistics nerd. I would love to see a study of the success rates of students who knew they had a 504 or IEP versus those who never knew. Because when you don't know and you don't have that label attached to you, and you don't have that record following you around and making you feel less than or not enough or broken, as you said, I would love to see the freedom that these kids have who have no idea that their chart says anything different than anybody else's chart in this classroom, and how they operate and function in school. Somebody send me a statistic, because I want to see that study, because I got a sneaky suspicion that they have much higher success rates and confidence levels and self-esteem and accomplishments than those that know. I could be wrong, but that's not likely.
I mean, I've had parents email me, like when I've had to email about, hey, you know, annual review's coming up, and it's like, okay, yeah, let's keep, I mean, they'll say my student hates that they have it, but we just keep it there as a safety precaution. I get it.
In case they need the accommodation in the future, it's there, but not harping on it. This is not your label. This is not chronic illness on your forehead.
That's another thing I would say to parents, like, let your child advocate for themselves. Like, they need to learn to advocate for themselves. I'm talking specifically probably to high school. Elementary school, obviously, you're going to advocate, like, you're going to stay on it, right? Middle school, that would be a good starting point to just kind of like, okay, let's see what they
do. A little bit. One hand off.
Hands off a little bit. Let's see what happens. You know, and then by high school, it's time to let them figure it out.
Because at midnight.
At midnight on their 18th birthday.
You're not getting that chart.
You're not getting that chart without them giving you permission.
You can't make their appointments. No, ma'am.
They'll ask you to pay the bill.
And
drive, but at that point, yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, working in the field, behind the scenes as a parent, backstage as a creative. You got a little bit of expertise from all those areas, mom, friend, counselor, even church ministry. We even talk about youth ministry and the work that you've done there and in that community. But you have so much wisdom to pass around just for this field and so many other expansions of it. So thank you for sharing your
Thank you for
time
having
and
me.
your wisdom. It's always great to sit on the screen with you. It's better at the table, but it's always great to sit on the
I know.
screen with you. So tonight we were talking about, if you're popping in late, we were talking about National Counseling Awareness Month with my special guest, Mrs. Crissy Johnston, who is a student services 504 coordinator and all things volunteer because it's National Volunteer Week. So I'm hyping her up. She didn't know when I picked the date, you know.
I did not know.
This is
That was a
National
secret.
Volunteers Week. She is always my volunteer of the year because she does everything out there. So thank you for being here. Thank y'all for tuning in. And
thank you for having me. I appreciate you. Miss Queen Angel, Miss Celebrity. I mean, you've got quite a story coming up for you too, ma'am.
Oh yeah, I know you're gonna pick on me. And we hope to see you all in the next few days.
Like, yeah.
Really soon. We hope so. But
for
watch for those posts. But we will see you all later.
Okay. Bye. Thank you.